The government sends a group of young offenders to a completely abandoned island as punishment, but unknown to them, the place hides dark secrets that begin killing both the officers and the prisoners one by one. The story begins at a correctional facility where troubled boys are brought to be reformed, including addicts and youths with serious behavioral issues, all kept under strict surveillance and harsh treatment. Among them is David, the youngest boy in the center, whose age makes him an easy target for violent bullies who torture him daily without mercy. David tries to report the abuse to a guard named Brian, but he is corrupt and sides with the bullies, leaving David isolated, traumatized, and mentally broken. His parents remain unaware of the torture, as his father, a businessman, sent him there only to cure his addiction. Over time, the brutal environment hardens David, stripping away his innocence. The next day, new inmates arrive, including a boy named Luke, who immediately draws hostile stares from the dominant bullies led by Steve and his allies Jeth and Blue, who plan to torment him as well, unaware that Luke is a trained martial arts fighter capable of overpowering them all. A guard named Ron introduces the rules, and as Luke settles into the routine, he notices the cruelty around him, especially David, who lives in constant fear. Luke understands the situation but cannot directly fight back due to strict rules. During a behavior training session focused on anger control, Luke demonstrates his strength by brutally destroying a punching dummy, shocking everyone and making the bullies think twice before provoking him. However, this small incident unknowingly sets off a chain of events that changes everything. Later, Luke finds David hiding in a locker room with another boy, terrified of the bullies, and reassures them that as long as he is there, no one will hurt them. Days pass until one night Luke slips on the floor and discovers it is covered in blood, only to find David dead on his bed after taking his own life, unable to endure the relentless torture any longer. The next morning, David's parents are informed, rumors spread throughout the facility, and Steve and his friends know the truth behind his death but cruelly plan to blame the guards instead. The center's leaders and David's father demand answers, but none of the boys speak up. Broken by grief yet driven by rage, David's father promises a punishment so severe that no one has ever returned alive. The management announces that any boy suspected of being responsible for David's death will be sent as punishment to a desolate island, a place previously used to exile offenders and from which no one has ever come back. So far, no news has ever come out that any of the criminals sent there have returned, which clearly suggests that something unknown exists on that island. Without any further delay, Steve's entire group and even Luke are sent to the island as punishment. The island is far from the mainland, and they travel toward it by boat, moving steadily across the sea. Luke cannot understand why he is being dragged into this, since he tried to help David, but now there is no point in thinking about it because the punishment must be endured. Their guard Brian is with them, and as soon as they reach the shore, they head toward an old military base. It is obvious to everyone that the island is completely deserted, with no people and not even animals in sight, which makes Luke increasingly anxious. Still, he assumes that the management must have had a reason for sending them there, especially since a guard is present. The island is filled with massive trees and strange species of bushes, and as they move deeper inside, one of Steve's companions hears a sound coming from the forest but is unable to warn the others before they all move ahead. Suddenly, Luke notices a strange handmade locket hanging from a tree, though he has no idea what its purpose is. Ignoring it, he joins the others in searching for the best place to set up camp, as they are supposed to stay there for an entire week before the management decides their fate. After settling down, Jeth starts complaining about severe mosquito bites, and Brian suggests lighting a fire to keep them away, explaining that such large mosquitoes are common in forest areas. Brian then orders Luke to fetch water from a nearby pond, and Luke slowly heads off to do so. On the way, he notices another handmade object, a doll, which makes him question why human-made items exist on an island that was said to be uninhabited. After filling the containers with water and preparing to leave, Luke is suddenly attacked from behind and knocked unconscious. When a long time passes and Brian grows worried, he and the boys go searching for Luke and eventually find him lying unconscious near the shore, clearly injured on the head. As they rush to help him, it becomes clear that something unseen is watching them from a distance before silently disappearing. After regaining consciousness, Luke explains that he felt someone strike him from behind with enough force to knock him out instantly, but Brian and the others do not dwell on it and return to the campsite. Even then, strange sounds continue to echo around them, with no clear source. Meanwhile, Steve and his friends find a pond and start swimming and having fun, behaving as if they are on vacation rather than serving a punishment. Some time later, Brian and the boys begin exploring the area, and one member of Steve's group wanders off to relieve himself, only to be suddenly attacked while the others continue moving forward, unaware of what has just happened. The attack is so precise that the boy does not even get a chance to scream for help, and no one knows what that unknown presence is that keeps making people disappear this way. A short while later, when Brian and a few boys move closer to the bushes, they discover a tent that looks recently set up, yet no one is visible nearby. As they step closer to investigate, they encounter a woman named Lynn, who introduces herself to Brian as the leader of a group of students. Just like Brian was sent to the island with a group of boys by one committee, another committee has sent Lynn there with several female inmates, revealing that this is not the only correctional facility and that many such centers send their offenders to this same island as punishment. It is then shown that one of Lynn's team members brings forward the boy who had disappeared earlier while relieving himself near the bushes, revealing that she was the one who attacked him, mistakenly believing he was spying on their group. Once the misunderstanding is cleared, it becomes evident that Lynn's team consists of several strong young women, and she firmly tells Brian and his group to leave the area and keep their distance. Understanding the situation, Brian takes his students away and quickly chooses another spot to set up camp. He assigns specific duties to each student, making it clear that they have brought very limited resources and must rely on nature to survive. According to Brian's plan, they will need to search different areas for supplies, so he divides the boys into 3 groups. Luke and Mike are assigned to gather resources, Steve and Lewis are sent to find a better location for relocation, and Jeff and Blue are tasked with identifying different plant and animal species. Everyone heads off to complete their assignments, but along the way, Jeff and Blue decide to cross the river instead of doing their job, hoping to approach the girls from Lynn's group, whom they are already infatuated with. Meanwhile, as Luke moves forward with Mike, he grows increasingly uncomfortable with his company and eventually leaves Mike behind to go on alone. The story then shifts to Steve and Lewis, who travel deeper into an abandoned area where they unexpectedly see an old man collecting firewood. The moment the old man notices them, he panics and tries to run for his life, but the 2 bullies surround him, with Lewis grabbing him while Steve brutally beats him as if venting his own rage on an innocent victim. Together they assault the old man so severely that he loses consciousness. Sometime later, Luke is shown walking through an unfamiliar area, and as he approaches an entrance, he discovers the old man's dead body, brutally battered as if someone had intentionally killed him. Confused and disturbed, Luke looks around for answers, but at that moment, 2 girls emerge from behind the bushes, Jennifer and Mandy from Lynn's group, and when they see Luke standing near the corpse, they immediately assume he is responsible and rush off to inform their leader, Lynn. Within a short time, everyone, including Lynn, arrives at the scene and immediately restrains Luke. Luke cannot understand why all the blame is being placed on him, as he only came there after noticing the man's body, but no one listens to a single word he says. Steve and Lewis also show up and claim they could not find any resources, even though they are the real culprits and must pretend to be innocent. Even the guard Brian grabs Luke and says he is capable of doing something like this, insisting that he must be kept under strict watch and escorted out with the help of security officers. Brian asks Lynn to contact the outside team using her satellite phone, but Lynn reveals that her phone has mysteriously gone missing and has not been found for an entire day. Brian then rushes back to his camp to use his own satellite phone, only to be shocked when he realizes that it too has disappeared. Now deeply worried, Brian questions every member, asking if this is some kind of prank, even confronting Steve, who angrily denies any involvement and tells him not to accuse him. When Steve's behavior turns aggressive, Lynn steps in to control the situation, as she has already begun to suspect him, but without solid evidence, she cannot release Luke either. Luke sits there completely stressed and confused, while it is clear that Lynn herself believes Luke is not responsible for the murder. The real problem now is that without a satellite phone, they cannot contact the outside committee, so they must find another way to survive and possibly escape. Lynn starts questioning Brian about Luke's background, what he did before, and what crime led him to this island. After much discussion, it is finally decided that both the boys and girls groups will stay together. Preparations for a combined camp begin, and everyone starts gathering resources. As night falls, Jennifer and Lewis are shown sharing an intimate private moment together, completely lost in each other, unaware of their surroundings. A strange sound comes from the bushes, which Jennifer briefly notices but then ignores as she stays focused on Lewis. Not far away, Steve is shown hiding behind a tree, watching their private moment with a disturbing expression on his face, seemingly enjoying what he is witnessing. By morning, everyone gets back to work, splitting up according to Brian's earlier plan to collect supplies. Jeff is then shown asking his partner Blue to stay behind while he goes alone to fetch water, and as he reaches the shore, he suddenly hears a strange sound coming from the other side. The sound turns out to be a low growl, and the moment he looks ahead, something lunges at him, killing him so fast that he does not even get a chance to scream. When Jeff does not return for a long time, Brian asks Blue to go look for him, since Jeff is his partner and it is his responsibility. Brian sends Blue along with another boy toward the shore, and as they start searching the area, they suddenly spot a mutilated body floating in the water. The sight is so horrifying that they panic and run back to the group, clearly stating that one of their team members is dead. Both team leaders, Brian and Lynn, take the situation seriously and prepare to take action, but suddenly sharp arrows fly out of nowhere and pierce straight into Brian's body. He collapses near a tree as more arrows strike him one after another, while no one can tell who is attacking them. Terrified, everyone starts running in different directions, but Lynn and Luke stay back to help Brian. From deep inside the forest, a whistling sound is heard, and that signal causes a pack of wild dogs to charge forward, as the whistle is clearly used to command them to hunt and attack. Realizing that Brian cannot be saved, he orders the others to run before the dogs reach them. As the wild dogs get dangerously close, Luke and Lynn are forced to flee, leaving Brian behind. Injured and unable to move, Brian is surrounded by the dogs, and with another whistle, they brutally attack him, killing him within moments. Now the chase turns toward the others who are still running. Luke manages to break away, but the wild dogs catch up to Lynn, who reaches a dead end near a cliff. With no escape left, the dogs attack her, and she falls from the height onto the rocks below, dying instantly, while Luke helplessly witnesses everything from a distance. Unable to do anything, he silently returns to the remaining members. The girls ask about their leader Lynn, and Luke delivers the devastating news that she is dead, warning them that the island is controlled by wild animals and intelligent beings working together who are deliberately hunting them. He insists that escaping the island is now the only option. As Luke begins making survival preparations, they soon discover Jetha's body tied to a tree with sharp wires, marked with the letter D, clearly indicating something deliberate and planned, proving that this is not the work of animals but of humans or highly intelligent entities. The remaining survivors desperately search for a safe place and a possible escape route, but as they move forward, Luke notices movement hidden within the leaves, suggesting someone is carefully concealed and watching them. Shortly after, they come across a small house and decide to take shelter inside, hoping to survive at least one night in this deadly place. Inside the house, they begin using whatever resources they can find, but no one still understands who is carrying out these attacks or how they are being executed so precisely. Luke suddenly realizes that the letter D marked on the dead body could stand for David, and it becomes clear that David's death is the reason behind all of this. Luke suspects that David's father, using his money and power, has orchestrated this entire nightmare to torture them and uncover the truth about who was truly responsible for his son's death. At that moment, Mike completely breaks down and starts accusing Steve and Lewis, saying that David died because of their constant torture. Steve and Lewis refuse to accept the blame and violently attack Mike to silence him. Terrified, Mike freezes and stops speaking, but Luke steps in with a knife, forcing Steve and Lewis back and demanding that Mike tell the truth about what really happened to David and whether Steve and his friends were responsible. Mike finally admits that David had been tortured from the very beginning, with Steve and Lewis being the main culprits who harassed him every single day, but he also says that David was deeply broken by being sent away from his parents, especially by his strict father, which shattered him emotionally. The girls overhear everything and begin to understand that Steve and his friends were directly involved, yet it is clear that whoever is punishing them now intends to spare no one. Shortly after, Jennifer goes outside to relieve herself, where she suddenly encounters Blue, who tries to force himself on her. Jennifer attempts to escape, but Blue knocks her to the ground and continues his assault as she screams for help. Just then, Lewis arrives and brutally attacks Blue, unable to tolerate seeing Jennifer being harmed, as they care deeply for each other. A violent fight breaks out between Lewis and Blue, and the noise draws everyone to the scene. Beaten badly, Blue panics and runs toward the bushes, only to step into an animal trap that clamps onto his leg, causing severe bleeding. As the group rushes to help, they realize that multiple traps have been carefully placed throughout the area. Moving cautiously, Luke tries to free Blue using a wooden stick, but suddenly they hear the sound of dogs barking in the distance, realizing that the same deadly dogs have likely detected their location. Everyone starts shouting that they must escape immediately as Blue panics and desperately tries to free his leg, but his leg breaks, causing him to fall straight into another trap, which snaps onto his face and kills him instantly. With no other options left, Luke and the others start running, first rushing back into the house, only to realize that flaming arrows are being fired at them, threatening to burn the entire place down. They hold themselves together for a moment and then escape through the back, but the wild dogs continue chasing them relentlessly. Luke and the others know that stopping even for a second will get them killed, and after hours of running through the forest, they finally reach an open area. By sheer luck, they come across Lynn, who is still alive but badly injured, her body covered in deep bite marks, yet she urges them to keep moving and tells them that a boat is hidden near the beach that can get them off the island. She gives them directions, and they immediately head that way, but just as they leave, something moves behind Lynn and viciously bites into her neck, killing her on the spot, proving that the unknown force is closing in fast. When Luke and the group reach the shoreline, they frantically search for the boat, but before they find it, Steve and Lewis spot it first and secretly decide not to tell anyone, attempting to take it for themselves. However, Luke, Jennifer, and Mandy notice them and run toward the shore, only for Steve to discover that the boat's fuel line has been cut and fuel is leaking everywhere. Suddenly, they look up toward the cliffs and see someone standing there, firing a burning arrow that sets the boat on fire, severely injuring Steve and Lewis in the process. At the same time, multiple wild dogs rush down toward them, forcing Steve and Lewis to flee toward a rocky area while the others dive into the water to escape. As the chaos unfolds, Mike ends up higher up, with Steve and Lewis running toward him as the dogs continue their pursuit, leading them into a cave that seems like their only safe shelter. When Mike tries to enter the cave, Steve grabs him, knowing the dogs will attack Mike first, but for reasons unknown, the dogs suddenly retreat. Meanwhile, Luke emerges from the water only to be attacked by another dog, but he manages to fight back with his knife and kill it, surviving the brutal encounter. As Luke and the others regroup, they find Lynn's dead body, so badly mutilated that it is horrifying to look at, making Luke realize that whoever is hunting them will not let them escape easily. Determined to distract the enemy, Luke goes off alone after killing the dog, but when he does not return for a long time, Steve approaches Mandy and begins harassing her, prompting Lewis to step in, leading to a violent fight between them, while Jennifer knows deep down that everything happening is ultimately Steve's fault. Because of Steve, David died and everyone else ended up trapped in this nightmare, but Steve had become so enraged that he picked up an arrow and killed his own friend Lewis, proving he would cross any limit to save himself. Horrified by everything she witnessed, Jennifer ran into the forest, only for her leg to get caught in a trap that flipped her upside down from a tree as sparking mechanisms activated around her body. Steve knew it was a timed explosive trap, yet he chose not to save her and left her to die, and Jennifer was burned alive on the spot. Meanwhile, Luke slowly made his way to a boat and realized it belonged to the enemy, taking an axe from it for protection. He could have escaped immediately, but instead decided to face whoever was behind the massacre and uncover the truth. At the same time, Steve captured Mike, tied him to a tree, and wrote "I killed David" on his body to lure the enemy out. Moments later, the real attacker finally appeared, revealing himself as David's father, John, a former military officer who had orchestrated the killings to find his son's true murderer. Steve laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but John had already figured out that Steve was responsible for David's death. When Steve tried to attack him with a trick, John shot him dead without hesitation. Next, John approached Mike with a knife, but instead of killing him, he set him free, knowing Mike was innocent. Mike ran away, while John then confronted Luke. Luke tried to explain that he had done everything he could to save David, but John was too consumed by grief and rage to listen and attacked Luke repeatedly. Luke defended himself with the axe, and a brutal fight broke out in which both men injured each other, but Luke could not forgive John for murdering so many innocent people, no matter the reason. John tries to run, but Luke eventually picks up a gun and shoots him dead. A short while later, the unknown force is shown killing Mike by throwing him down from a height, though the reason behind it is never explained, and it disappears without revealing anything. Luke and Mandy then get onto the boat and escape the island. It seems likely that someone else was behind everything, a truth that never fully comes to light, but Luke decides that he will uncover it no matter what. The story ends here.